Hello and welcome to this edition of the Alaska Report. I'm Senator Lisa Murkowski. This month I am very pleased to be joined in studio with my first of two groups of summer interns. During the course of the internship, we have young Alaskans who come back to Washington, D.C. to see the work of a Senate office and the legislative process from perhaps a very unique perspective. Many individuals in public service today can trace their careers back to their own internship here in Washington, D.C. I know this because I, too, was once a summer intern here in Washington with Senator Stevens. The interns that are here with us in this first session have spent time shadowing me to my meetings and hearings around the Capitol and observing what a day in the life of a senator is like. I think they've gained some perspective that is perhaps unique and interesting. What is fun with this particular show that we do is the interns have an opportunity to ask questions of me. So I will introduce them to you, and again, this is their turn to ask the questions and put me on the hot seat. So interns, welcome all of you to the Alaska Report. I think folks will find as they listen to this brief show that you come from all over the state, have interests that are perhaps a little bit different. So Joseph, why don't we start down here on this end with you. Introduce yourself, tell the viewers where you're from, and hit me with your best shot, as they say.
Hi, I'm Joseph Kelly from Thorn Bay, Alaska. Senator Murkowski, during shadowing you, I have heard you say that we need to put policy in front of politics. Mm-hmm. Could you explain what that statement means and give an example?
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of politics that goes on here in Washington, D.C. It is the nature of the work at times, but at times that the political operations that go on do overshadow and take precedence over the job that we are tasked to do, which is building good policy, putting legislation into place. We have had several examples in the past few months where efforts to advance legislation that would help us create more jobs in this country, whether it's through legislation that would build out the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, or the small business jobs opportunity. These bills have actually been pulled down because we're getting more into the messaging of amendments, knowing full well that an amendment isn't going to pass, but by golly, we want to send a message. Well, in the meantime, we're at 9.1% unemployment. We haven't advanced legislation that could actually help us with job creation. It's frustrating, and it's an example of where the politics has preceded the policy. I think the people have sent us back here to Washington to work on policy, to help build a stronger economy, to create more jobs and do more for the people of this country and their opportunities. It's kind of a disappointing place to be at. So I say that a lot, and I'm working to try to change that dynamic. Jayan, nice to have you here.
Hi. Hello, Senator. My name is Jayan Heren, and I'm from Bethel. How do you deal with specific Alaskan educational issues like high dropout rates at the federal level?
It's really an important question because it has such implications for young people all over the country. But in Alaska, we continue to see high dropout rates that are really, really quite troubling. And in certain parts of the state, in rural areas, Bethel's a good example, the dropout rate is unacceptable. So it begs the question, where are we leaving our kids behind? What is happening that is causing them to think that school is not relevant to them? Where are we failing them? So there is a federal role, and I am going to be introducing legislation probably within the next week or so that focuses on how we deal with the dropout rate, how we can target those areas where we know we've got higher incidences of dropouts, providing some grant opportunities to work with those schools, work with those young people, and there's no silver bullet that is out there. But what I have done, I've convened a conference in Alaska. As I go and talk to students in high schools, I ask the young people, tell us, What's going on? What is it? What are some of the markers or the triggers that are out there? What should we be looking for? What can we be doing better? We've taken many of these ideas. We work with folks on the state level, the national level, to try to build out some legislation that we hope will help to address what we're seeing with the dropout rate. But we recognize that when young people give up on school early on, their opportunities long-term are greatly, greatly limited. We want to give them all of the best opportunities. So if it means we need to focus more on vocational education, if it means we need to focus more on ensuring that you've got the cultural benefits that come from being an Alaska Native out in a rural area, let's figure that out. So no easy answer, but it's something that demands attention, and I'm working on that in the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee. Thank you. Bernadette.
I'm Bernadette Mays from Fairbanks. Senator, I was wondering, Alaskan teenagers have a high rate of mental illnesses such as depression, eating, and bipolar disorders. How do you think we can advocate and improve these percentages?
Awareness is such a big aspect of what we're dealing with when we're talking about some of these disorders with any aspect of our population. But you're correct, Bernadette. We're seeing the numbers of young people that have mental disorders, that are having problems that, perhaps we're just not diagnosing early enough. Perhaps we're just not getting to them. But then when we see the high rate of suicide that we have in the state of Alaska, you have to wonder how close that connection is between a young person that is perhaps bipolar or has depression, has the eating disorders that we're talking about, and how that might then play into their feeling of self-worth that ultimately ends up in taking their life. We need to be looking at this. We need to be proactive. We need to engage at the earliest level possible. I think perhaps there was a time when you would say, well, young people don't get depressed. Yes, young people do suffer from depression. And how do we treat it? How do we recognize early enough to help make a difference? So it's not only making sure that you've got the help that is available within schools to identify it, but within the community as a whole. And I think we recognize in Alaska, particularly when it comes to mental health specialists, we don't have enough of the professionals there to help all within our communities, not just the young people. But so much of it is about awareness. And my advice to young people, when we're talking about suicide particularly, reach out, be that friend, ask them if they need help, be that shoulder that they need to lean on. And it goes for some of the other issues that are faced by our young people far too frequently. Important issue. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you, Senator.
Charisse, nice to have you
Hello,
here.
Senator. My name is Speedis. I'm from Fairbanks. Senator, how does federal management play a role in Alaska Native subsistence, hunting, and fishing rights?
Well, as Alaskans know, with the NILCA that was passed back in 1980, it was directed that the federal government would have management over those federal lands. About 60% of the lands in the state of Alaska are under federal ownership. So that management of the land comes under the auspices or the jurisdiction of the federal government. Contained then within that management is the Federal Subsistence Advisory Board, the groups that come together to work to provide for the recommendations to build out the policies as they are enacted on federal lands. It does set up a system that can result in conflict, because you've got state lands where they are managed by the state, and then the federal management of the lands. Can be confusing, can result in issues between the land managers that I think oftentimes cause concern for the Alaska resident. And it is the way that the land management system is currently built up. But there is quite a considerable federal role given the 60% of our state that is under federal management.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Isaac,
Yes,
welcome.
thank you. How has policy, or I'm Isaac Fields from Kodiak, I should say.
Very good.
How has policy adopted on the federal level affected the Alaskan fishing industry and its vital part of Alaska's economy, as well as a reliable renewable resource for the entire nation?
Well, coming out of Kodiak, you know and appreciate the role of a strong fishery, and a strong fishery that is sustainable. And our good, strong fisheries come about because we've got great stocks, but we also manage our fisheries in a way that I think is the envy of other areas in the country. Under the Magnuson-Stevens Act, we had regional fisheries management organizations that were put in place. Alaska is under the auspices of the North Pacific Fisheries Council. This is a management council that looks to the strength of the stocks and really works to manage them. So whether you are in Kodiak or whether you are in the Bering Sea, there is that level of management that comes about because of the federal role. Now, as with any level of management, whether it's the fisheries or whether it's on the land, oftentimes you can have conflict because there are decisions that are made that perhaps you might not like because of a limitation or a restriction on a fishery, on a gear type, but the effort that is underway is really designed to ensure that we have not only a strong fishery for today, for you and your family to be fishing, but a sustainable, strong fishery that continues for decades. It's about sustainable management, and the federal role on our oceans with the fisheries is not unlike what we see with the federal management of our lands as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, though. Hope it's a good fishing season.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's go to the back row. Are we starting down at the end there with Silas?
All right. Hi, I'm Silas Talbot from Anchorage. Senator, you are an advocate for alternative energy,
Yes.
as well as a promoter of local energy sources in Alaska. What are your thoughts on nuclear energy, and do you think we should develop ways to produce this kind of energy in Alaska?
I have been a very strong proponent of all of the above when it comes to energy sources. When people look at Alaska, they think of us because we produce oil, we produce natural gas, we've got coal reserves, but don't necessarily think of us as a state where the focus is on renewables or other forms such as nuclear. I believe that we need to have an energy policy that includes all energy sources, particularly those that move us towards a cleaner emitting sources of energy. Nuclear is clearly in that category. I think that the nuclear portfolio that we have in this country needs to be enhanced. It needs to be built on. We haven't seen new nuclear production facilities built in this country for over a quarter of a century. That dynamic needs to change. You asked the question whether or not nuclear might have a role in a state like Alaska. The community of Galena has for years been looking at the idea of a small modular nuclear reactor. This is something that whether or not it's appropriate for that community, they'll make those decisions. But do I think that there is a role, particularly for the small modular reactors? Absolutely. And if we can work to reduce the cost, to make it more efficient, more cost efficient, I think that these are solutions that we should not be afraid to look to. We've got to do it wisely, we've got to do it responsibly and safely, as we attempt to do with all of our energy production. I've actually introduced a bill with the chairman of the Energy Committee that would work to build out small modular nuclear reactors. Whether or not it's a good fit for us in Alaska, we'll figure that out as we build out our own energy portfolio within the state. But I do believe that there is a role for nuclear in our nation's energy portfolio. And I know some of you have been working on the Energy Committee with us while you've been here, which is great. So hopefully you've learned a lot there. Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan Hammonds. I'm from Anchorage. Senator, what is the most pressing issue in the Senate at this time?
Well, at this point in time, I think it really is coming down to how we deal with our debt, how we deal with the budget and the spending issues in front of this, and what it means for us as a nation. We, as we know, are approaching the debt limit. In other words, we're approaching the maximum on our credit card, if you will. The nation is not in a situation where we are able to borrow anymore. We are maxed out on the card. Well, what does that really mean? You say, well, if you don't have any more that you can put on the card, stop spending. Well, our problem is we won't be able to even pay for our obligations, whether it's for Medicare or Social Security, the interest on our debt. We are approaching a fiscal crisis. So what's going on here in Washington, D.C. this summer, and what you all have been observing are the discussions about how we deal with our $14 trillion debt, how we deal with the fact that we are approaching this debt limit, how will we keep our credit worthiness as a nation. These are critical decisions, because how we handle this will have an impact on everything else that we're doing. You're all getting ready to go off to college and pursue other opportunities. Well, you want to know that you're going to be able to avail yourself of student loans. You want to know that when you get out of school that there are jobs and opportunities for you. But if we are a nation that has gone into the tank, it's pretty tough to figure out how we're going to be working to create jobs. So we've got a lot on our shoulders right now, a great deal of difficult decisions that face us. But so much of it comes down to how we deal with this $14 trillion debt that has accumulated and how we're going to take care of it. Because if we don't take care of it, it will be you and your generation that shoulders that burden. That's not right. We need to resolve this. Graham.
Thank you.
I'm Graham Campbell from Sitka. Senator, what can Alaska do to become a frontrunner in the alternative energy field in the United States?
It's a great question. It's one that I love to talk about because we've got so much potential in Alaska. I mentioned in speaking with Silas that, yes, people look at us as being the state that produces a lot of oil, good for us, but we also can be, the Saudi Arabia of the renewable energy world if we so desire. Think about what we've got. We've got 33,000 miles of coastline. There in Sitka, you're surrounded, you're an island. You've got potential from the ocean, from the tides, from the currents, from the differential in the temperature of water. Great potential for us there. Think about the Aleutian Islands. It's one string of volcanoes, just bubbling with geothermal energy. How can we tap into that? How can we harness that? We're already doing a pretty good job with harnessing the wind. We need to be doing more. In Sitka, your power, or a good portion of it, is coming from Blue Lake. It's a hydroelectric project, clean, renewable energy. We are a state that is already at 25% renewable energy, good for us. That comes to us through hydroelectric. Can we be doing more? Absolutely. We're working to try to advance that. It's kind of interesting, and you'd appreciate this coming from Southeast where it rains all the time, but hydropower is not considered a renewable energy source. That's something that I'm trying to change. I was born in Ketchikan, and when it rains 300 days out of the year, you figure that this is a renewable energy source. We're going to work on that. But Alaska can clearly be a leader with renewable energy. What we're trying to figure out is how we can make these smaller scale projects, because in so many of our communities, there's no energy grid that we are tied to. So how we can harness the wind and tie it in with perhaps hydro, how we can utilize wind and solar as they're doing in Kotzebue, how we can use biomass more efficiently, more effectively. We've got great opportunities, and we can be leading the country when it comes to renewable. This is a great opportunity for our young people to focus on and give us the great ideas there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy.
Hi, I'm LucyTZ from Ketchikan, and immigration policies are constantly being reconsidered and discussed in Congress. To what extent should the United States secure its borders, and how can these security resources be more beneficially redirected in order to protect its citizens?
It is imperative that we have borders that are secure, borders that function. And I think it's fair to say that certainly on our southern border, it's very porous right now. We've got some very serious issues with the lack of security. We have attempted to address that over the course of years since I've been here in the United States Senate. A lot of money has been directed to the border. Initially, the cry was, well, just build a fence. Well, I think all of you could look at that and say, well, if you build a fence, what happens if somebody has a ladder who's higher than that? Or what's happening is the number of tunnels that are going underneath. If the will to get through is there, the highest fence that we build can still be scaled. So what can we do? There's a lot of talk about virtual fence. Let's use our technologies to help us out with this. Let's also use the manpower that is available in ensuring that we have sufficient Border Patrol, border agents, those who are tasked with monitoring our borders. But again, let's do it in a smart way. I think it's often easy to just say, well, just secure the borders and we'll move on with it. When you appreciate the length of our southern border and the geographic difficulties in securing it, I think we need to recognize that it again is simple to say just secure it, but how we do it to make sure that it is safe from terror. We are safe from terrorist threat. We have stemmed the flow of illegal immigration. We're a long ways from doing that yet right now. Part of the difficulty that we're facing is there is incentive by those on the other side of that border to bring drugs into this country. They have extraordinary amounts of money to utilize the technologies that are outfoxing us to get on the other side, unfortunately, using human beings who are in a very vulnerable situation and putting their lives in peril. So it's more than just making sure that we no longer have illegal immigrants coming in. We've got a real drug fight on our hands on our southern borders. Now, I haven't even mentioned the northern border, which is what Alaska shares. That too is an issue where we must make sure that we have border security that is meaningful and does the job that I think all in this country are hoping when we talk about secure borders.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last man up, Kyle.
I'm Kyle Moore from Anchorage. Senator, you spoke about how Alaska and Hawaii have very unique circumstances when it comes to constituent representation in the home state. How do you overcome traveling, jet lag, and time zone changes when traveling between DC and Alaska?
Well, you see this watch. This is a Washington, D.C. watch. It always stays on Washington time. The watch that I wear in Alaska is always on Alaska time. So when I get up in the morning to go home to Alaska, I put on my Alaska watch. So I'm 4 hours behind, and I start looking at that, and it's like, well, okay, I must be hungry because it's now 8 o'clock in the morning Alaska time. It's a little bit of mind over matter, and it's a little bit flip. But the fact of the matter is, it's a long haul back and forth between Washington, D.C. and home. And I make that trip quite frequently. I don't necessarily learn to like it, but I have gotten used to it. It's a good 8 hours of uninterrupted time on the airplane to get all my homework done, do all my briefing papers, write speeches. It's a great block of time. And I try to use that effectively. It helps in the summertime going back to Alaska, because even though you've added 4 more hours to your day, the sun is up and there's lots of energy, and I don't seem to get tired going that direction. But when you come back to Washington, D.C., and even though you say, well, I should have 4 more hours, now you really get drug out coming east. I think all of you felt it when you made the trip back. During the summer, I'm back up in the state just about every weekend, about 3 weekends out of 4. And it's because there's so much going on. And it's also critically important for me to be touching base with the folks back home. In order for me to best represent Alaskans, it's not about them coming to Washington, D.C. to explain their issues. I need to be there to hear them. I need to be driving down that road and seeing where the traffic is. I need to be pulling into the filling station and seeing what the local prices are and what people are paying for produce in the grocery store. There's no substitute for that. So it's well worth the long haul back and forth. I don't complain about it because I know that my colleagues from Hawaii have about an extra 2 hours to their flight. So mine isn't the worst commute, and the benefit is that I get to go home to the most incredible state in the United States of America. So that makes the flight all worthwhile. You all have had great questions. I really appreciate it. It's always a real pleasure and a delight to have the interns come back to Washington. You're not afraid to ask questions, and you remind me about the incredible place that we work in our nation's capital, and the incredible opportunity that I have to serve Alaskans. And your service here in your month back here is hopefully something that you will long remember and gain very positive impressions. I don't want you to leave Washington, D.C. only thinking about, oh gosh, it was always so hot there. I'd like you to remember that this was a short opportunity that you had to observe your nation's government at work and know that you had a small part in making things happen. So thank you for being here, all of you. And to our viewers who have joined us today, I thank you. Hopefully you have enjoyed this opportunity to meet these 10 fine young Alaskans from around the state and hear their questions of me. We'll have an opportunity in a couple months to meet the second session of Summer Interns, and look forward to that at that time. I want to thank you for joining us on this edition of the Alaska Report. Take care and have a great summer.